Hello, Oklahoma. Hey, this is Elephant in the Room with J.J. Humphrey. Always my great guest, Bobby Cleveland. He's looking a little sleepy today, so we're going to have to liven up the conversation, wake him up, and keep him on his toes. Hey, we got a very special guest today. We have a former state representative as well as a former educator. So she has a lot of insight on what's going on in the education department, got a little historical knowledge on things that have happened in education as well as there at the Capitol building. So she brings a lot to the table to discuss today. But Sherrie got out of the legislator to start a passion of hers, which is kids being abused in school. So tell us a little bit, Sherrie, about why you got out, what you're trying to start, and why you're trying to start that.
All right. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate you. And I'm happy to spend a little bit of time here with you. So in August of 23, I had a constituent send me a video of somebody that she served in the military with. And it was a gentleman that was telling about how he had been sexually assaulted by his soccer coach in high school. And, once I heard his story and listened to the confession of his predator, tell him why he sexually assaulted him for 4 years, I thought, you know what, this is not something that I can walk away from. And so I started doing some research, looking through all the court records that I could find, and then ran a piece of legislation last year to try to build a healthy boundary between educators and our students. And so we got that passed. It got signed by the governor. And so I think that that has been very successful. But it doesn't change the fact that if kids want, if people want access to children, they're going to get it whichever way they can get it. And so what we're finding in the research is that we have sexual predators that are actually masquerading as educators in our schools. You want some data? I've got lots of data.
Lay it on us. We're always open for data.
Okay. So I've got 270, maybe a couple more have been added over the last few days, but last count, there were 270 predators that date back to 2010 and moving forward that have been lost their jobs. The majority of them have either their certificates have been revoked, suspended, or they have voluntarily suspended them. And those are all people who have sexually assaulted, abused, or harassed children in the public school system since 2010. And that's just in the state of Oklahoma.
Is that people who they weren't filed any charges against any of them?
The majority of them have charges filed against them. I think I've got 85 of them that I'm still looking for the documentation where they actually had charges filed against them, because some of them get charged in the Oklahoma court system, and then some of them get charged through the federal court system. And so sometimes it's hard to find that documentation. But the majority of the cases, well, all of the cases that I have some kind of report, whether it's a news report, something out of the State Department of Ed, OSCN, the U.S. Attorney's Office. There's some kind of documentation on the majority of them.
So what's the solution?
Well, we've got, several things that we're looking at, really holding those accountable who fail to report. That's going to be one of the biggest things that we can do, because right now, those people that are hiding and sweeping these reports under the rug, they are not getting held accountable for failure to protect. And what's sad is that the taxpayers are actually the ones that are being held accountable for some of that, because when a young person sues a school, which we've had 10 cases that I've found so far in the state of Oklahoma that have been settled. When a young person sues a school for failure to protect, that money that gets paid to the victim actually comes out of the something called the sinking fund. And so taxpayers are the ones being held accountable, and the superintendents, the principals, and the school board members who are not protecting our children are the ones who should be paying the price. But unfortunately, it's our taxpayers
They
and our
keep
young
their
people
job.
who are getting
They keep
abused.
their job, and they're still there.
In a lot of the cases, they have, yes, they still have a job of some sort. And so,
And even if they don't have a job, Sherrie, the thing about it is, unless we prosecute these people, and again, I'm not saying every one of them need to go to the penitentiary. I'm okay with probation, but they need a record, and they need a record so that they cannot go back to work in that kind of environment. Because what we see, there was a case over towards Ardmore, and I can't remember what the name of the town was, where a football coach was making his team get naked and do push-ups and run and all that. I get a call on that after we start checking. This guy has had the same problem at 2 or 3 different schools that he's been to. All of these similar type problems, and then the teacher who had the guts, if you want to say, who called it out. Guess what? They fire her, and then they blacklist her where she can't get a job anywhere around her. She has to move plumb out of the country to get a job because they said that she was the problem. Now, why is it that the teacher who calls out the problem is the one attacked by these people? And again, that's just mind-boggling to me that he could have the same problem, 3 schools, never done anything. To my knowledge, they're still fighting this out, and that's been a year or so ago. And I don't know what's actually happening in that case, but I know that they went after some of the kids, kind of, blacklisted the kids that had come out on that report. And I would have never dreamed here in Oklahoma that we would go after the people who call out sexual abuse and this kind of abuse in a school.
Well, they had one in Lexington.
Yeah, and that's happening. Yes, absolutely.
In Lexington, where that I guess he was a football coach or some kind of a coach, and it probably took a year, maybe 2 years to do something about that. They're just letting it go.
Yeah, that case came out last year, 2024. I don't remember what month it was. It was pretty early on in the school year. And I believe that his license has been suspended. And I don't know, there's so many of them now that I have a hard time. They kind of all run together after a while. I'm very familiar with some of the cases, especially the ones that I've gone through the court records, and then other ones.
Parents happened to the superintendent about it, and nothing happened.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that we're doing. We have held some parent meetings, and one of the things that we're trying to educate the public on is, rather than going to the school first, you go to the law enforcement first, file it with the city police department, and file it with the county police department. That way you've got reports from both entities, and then report it on the Awarity app to the State Department of Education so that they're aware of it. And then you go to the superintendent, the principal, and the school board, every school board member, because one of the things that I'm seeing in the court cases is that the school boards are claiming deniability, that they didn't know anything about it. And so if a parent will, do the due diligence and report the crime first to law enforcement, and then go to the school and tell them, I have case numbers.
They did that, Sherrie, in Lexington, to the police department.
Well, now I know that the superintendent there, he did a really good job. I was notified. I've got a couple of friends that teach out in Lexington, and as soon as it broke there in the district, it was even before that it broke in the news, they were sending me information about the gentleman that he was actually sending videos of himself. And
I think the grandmother, I think somebody there sent me the picture of what he was sending out, I think, to someone's daughter.
Yeah. He sent it to several.
Like 15 years old.
And that's another thing, is when you do get help to law enforcement, it truly helps if it's not just your word. If you can have video, if you can have text messages, if you can have other witnesses document when these things were said, use some due diligence to try to, when you go in there, it's not just your word, because we do know that that's the really challenging part of today's law enforcement is used to nobody would have, I'm not going to say there wasn't people who lied before, but if you were caught lying on something like this, it would ruin you, Now, guess what? Everybody, somebody just tell a lie and just try to ruin somebody's career. And then when they're caught in the lie, it's just like, well, they lied. No big deal. Let's go on. So again, I think there ought to be some conversation about filing on people who lie about this stuff, because then it just makes it harder when you do have a actual case to actually get something done because of the constant lies and constant, barrage on people. So this, Sherrie, as a teacher, not all your students going to love you. And again, it's not a problem for a student to make up a lie and then try to ruin your name. Most of that doesn't go a whole lot of places, but it still requires investigations, and it's still embarrassing, and it's still a big, big problem. But now, your bill that you passed right before you left was basically say that teachers and students could not share social media without a group, right?
No, it was actually more about private conversations back and forth. I mean, it did involve some social media because, Snapchat and some of those offer a private messaging group. And so what it said was, if a educator or a school employee was going to communicate with a student, it had to be over a school approved platform. If it wasn't over the school approved platforms, then it had to include a parent in the text messaging or whatever kind of message they sent to them that was private outside of the school approved platform.
Is it working?
And that was including so one of the things I got a little pushback on that was, what about a person who is a teacher and who is also a youth minister in their church? How do they? But again, that's what we looked at. In common sense, if you're a youth pastor out there and you're not a teacher, if you're just a youth pastor, you ought to be using some common sense and putting another adult in those conversations. One, to keep somebody from saying something untrue. Two, to keep you from getting in a compromise. Be smart and get ahead and don't get in a compromised position. Put your pastor on there. Put make sure you have a male and a female on that group chat. Do group chat. So again, that it's not a one-on-one thing with a youth, especially, and I was going to say of opposite sex, but anymore that really doesn't matter like it used to. So again, just protect yourself and do what's smart. I mean, that's just something that we should be doing. Just a little wisdom right there, and that's pretty much what your bill's doing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And try to change that. Is there people trying to attack that bill?
Yes, there was someone who filed some legislation in the House, and then somebody filed some in the Senate to make some changes, trying to give parents an opt-out. But I reached out to them. I said, "Listen, you are offering the opportunity for a pedophile to have exclusive, unfettered access to a student. And just because a parent trusts them doesn't mean that they are trustworthy." I just like the case that I told you about that actually got me into this to begin with. He came from a single parent family. His mother was busy, worked 2 jobs. She trusted this coach, and she would have been one of the first ones to sign an opt-out form to give that coach access to her son. And so, and I've talked to him about that, and he said, absolutely. My mother, God rest her soul, she would have been one that would have approved that. And, not knowing exactly what she was getting into or getting him into by allowing that. And so, that's just one of those examples where You can't, just because somebody trusts that person doesn't mean that they're trustworthy. And we have to protect our kids when parents are unknowing what is happening. We have to make sure that we're not giving them the opportunity to just completely allow unfettered access. And that's one of the things that I'm concerned about with them trying to change the cell phones and trying to give an opt-out, because you take cell phones away from our students during the day at school. Well, then you give the school employee the access to the student after hours. You're just opening up, just some bad policy. So we need to do what we can to protect our students, because parents are sometimes completely unknowing.
Well, and a lot of things that people don't understand. People look at sex offenders and think, they think ancestral, stupid, and
Yep.
quite the opposite. When you look at sex offenders as far as other criminal offenders, generally sex offenders are more educated. Generally, they are more calculated. And again, they are manipulators. I can remember classes that, that I went to showing you just the way sex offenders think is that, if your kid got their bike stolen and said, "Hey, JJ, I got my bike stolen. Could you help me?" And you go, "Oh yeah, we'll look for that. Okay, no problem. Yeah, we'll do all we can." Okay, that's the way me or you think. The way a sex offender thinks, let's draw a picture of your bike and let's make posters and let's go around the neighborhood and put these posters up so that we can help you find your bike. And they will walk them around looking for bikes. And a lot of these are so manipulative. They're the one who stole the bike and then go find the bike. And now guess what? They're this kid's hero. And now this super big bond. Now people don't think about, but that's the way sex offenders think. They manipulate. They make sure. So for them to get in these kind of positions, and if you look at, I do a lot of crime study, and I watched yesterday on John Wayne Casey, serial killer, a massive sexual serial killer. And this guy was a masterful manipulator. He had everybody fooled. He was one of the top people in Chicago, the master of parades on big deal, politically influential, big businessman, successful, money, the whole 9 yards, and all the time raping and killing young male kids. And so that's back in the 70s or so.
Yeah. And one of the things that we're seeing in the research is that the majority of these cases take place in rural communities, because one of the things, and this as a law enforcement officer, that people who are psychopaths, they go into the city because they want to hide, but predators go into the small communities because they want people to see them as something larger than life, the favorite teacher, the favorite coach, the favorite, employee at the school. They volunteer in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and Little League and at the church, and they're deacons in their church and their youth pastors, or, volunteer with the youth, because they do that because they create this persona. We call it grooming. And they create this persona so that when one of their victims steps up and says, "This person did this to me," then the community wraps around that predator rather than wrapping around the victim. And they say, "Oh, I know so-and-so, he wouldn't do that." Yeah. Or "I know so-and-so, she wouldn't do that." And so the victim gets victimized all over again by the community because people stand up for the victimizer rather than the victim. And so, that just makes that much more heinous.
My dad was a superintendent, and he had, so a person go to work, kind of coaching position, had married into a family well-known in the community, really, really well respected. This guy was pretty much an unknown, but his family that he's tied into, super, super good. They had gotten some pretty significant reports of behavior that was just really, really bad. And my dad had wanted to fire that guy. was the only one who wanted to fire him. The whole board voted against him in an executive meeting, and nobody knew that. It never came out. I knew it. Now that he's passed away, I'll share that. But again, even the family of these kids hated my dad because they thought that he was the one who decided, when he was the only one who was trying. And then later the guy got caught and they had to fire him. And really, man, that put a lot of heat on my dad. Everybody was mad at my dad, saying, look there, we told you so. And look there, you did absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. And my dad was the kind of guy that just, he took the heat, never give up, that the board was the ones that didn't want to do anything on that.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, you get in these small communities and people are related to each other, and
right.
it just takes on a whole different dynamic, like you were talking about.
Yeah, we've got a case down in Wetumpka right now where, in fact, it's the abuser from my original story that I started with. His family owned, you can look this up on the internet right now, but his family has owned the Dairy Queen in Wetumpka for 30 years, I think, or maybe 60 years. I don't know, a very long time. And so he's well known there. His wife ended up being superintendent. He was eventually he became, I think he was assistant athletic director, and then was in charge of the alternative education program, where he was actually, what the stories are being told is that he was actually recruiting some of the young people from the football team into the alt ed program. And that's where he was committing some of his crimes. And then, of course, his wife was covering it up. I think we'll be able to see more of those details and see some of that truth come out when this guy gets finally tried in court. Looking forward to that. He's actually going before the judge again on Tuesday. And so that's one of the things that we're seeing, is that the small town politics actually covers up a lot of those. And then part of the other problem is that they're not getting, when they go into court, they're getting pled down, and they're not actually getting charged and convicted of their sex crimes. The crimes against the digital access and the digital crimes is what they're getting convicted of. And so I think the maximum sentence on that is 10 years. We've got a guy that's getting ready to come out, in fact, tomorrow. I think he's due to be released tomorrow. The guy out in Shawnee. And he was allowed to work for that school district for 17 years and never could get anybody to do anything to hold him accountable. Same thing happened with him. The superintendent wanted to fire him, but the board wouldn't let her. And so he remained teaching for I don't know how many years. I don't know at what point during his career that happened, but he finally got sentenced, was only sentenced for the digital crimes, and I believe that he's only going to end up serving a year of his 5 years. And so
that was a football coach, wasn't it?
He was the assistant athletic director out there. But okay. Yeah, I think he coached baseball or basketball.
That case that you're talking about there in Wewoka, I actually have been called. Wetumpka. Yeah, Wetumpka. I've actually been called on that. And you know what's so frustrating is not just in the school system that we see this cover up in the school system and guarding. And again, we do have to say, we got to guard our teachers from being lied on.
Yes.
We got to make sure. So here's as an investigator, one thing I've learned a long time ago: when I get information, I don't assume it's right or wrong. Mm-hmm. I follow that information, see whether it can be verified or unverified. And I love to verify it. A lot of times we reach a place where we can't do either one. We can't verify it's true. We can't verify it's false. I hate that, because you really can't take action on anything that you can't verify.
Right.
I love it when we can verify that people actually lied. We should pursue that. And I love it when we can prove that they're actually telling the truth.
Yeah.
And then we should prosecute it. And again, what you're seeing is those cases are not followed up. And that's just mind blowing. But the problem also is we see it not only in the school system, but who do you call when you get these kind of cases? You call DHS. And if you want to talk about some problems You want to talk about screaming some massive, massive problems.
Yeah.
We have kids in detention centers being sexually molested that the DHS authorities up to the leadership, OJA, OCCY, these OCCY is kind of supposed to be the watchdog. And if I'm not mistaken, we've got letters from OCCY going, hey, this is going on. It needs to stop. And guess what? OCCY doesn't do anything. They don't do anything, DHS, OJA. And again, that's why we went into the Pinnacle plan. If you notice, we got out of that here recently. I really think we've been out of that for a long time. I think that's going to end up being some interesting conversation in and by itself. But here in Oklahoma, we have mental health facilities taking care of, youth mental health, that we have workers came forward, was fired, saying that they were waterboarding. Seems to be a lot of evidence this is true. Waterboarding, torturing mental health. I've got pictures of mental health kids, stomp, black eyes. These are kids that can't even talk. And so why is that going on? Sexual molestation from employees at detention centers. We know that's going on. We've already confirmed that. I've got other places. And guess what? Then you get in the court system, and again, it's all delayed. And you were talking about a case there at Shawnee. It's amazing because there was a case quite a few years ago, Kelsey Briggs, in which continual abuse, continued, kid getting arms broke, legs broke, beaten, all kinds of stuff. And they just kept putting that kid back in the same home. And eventually the kid was killed and put in a freezer. And when that happened, it went nationwide, and we passed a bunch of laws. But guess what? Those laws are being completely ignored. And I will tell you, even in the county that happened in, may be one of the worst counties to this day to see these kind of cases tried, covered up, everything.
Yeah.
JJ,
and that was in Scott County, right?
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
JJ, what you're talking about there, did you get any help from the legislatures or attorney general or anybody?
Bob, and again, Sherrie can speak to this. I know Sherrie came to me and talked about when she was first introduced that case. We had numerous conversations. I had all kinds of stuff going on in the prison system where we were catching, Bob, you know that, sexual rapes going on, murders going on, extortion going on, and could prove it. I just got through talking about verify human rights violations, but this DHS stuff is just a whole new level to me, because who can sit and torture a kid, and who can allow kids to be sexually molested? I just got a text message from somebody saying, we apologize for getting you in this because we know that the legislators have went after you. So Bob, in answer to your question, not only have they not done anything, and we have introduced this stuff. I mean, not just me. We've had lawyer groups write massive reports. We've had other people come forward verifying, employees coming forward, whistleblowers coming forward, not one, multiple ones. And our AG has completely ignored it. The court system has refused to take the evidence. We were going to get a grand jury petition. And what we were going to do is we were going to slide that evidence, attach it to that grand jury, because under this Kelsey Briggs Act, they have to take action. They have to order an investigation. That's all we wanted. And so under that act, well, guess what? The judge wouldn't let us put the information. Now, how can a judge go, we're not going to let you attach the evidence to your petition? I mean, golly, how you do that?
What did AG say?
AG ignored it. AG has not done anything at all. And again, he's wanting to run for governor, and I'm going to make him own that. I'm going to put that back on him 100 times. He's going to wish he never heard Humphrey. I think he already wished he never heard Humphrey, but he just imagining things right now. He don't know. AG, if you're listening, or any of your employees listening, it's going to get capital. You ever heard of that family of the Lees? Because they got one kid named Ugg. It's ugly, and that's what's coming on. It's going to get ugly on you, Mr. AG, wanting to run for governor. So, but here's the deal, Bob, what's just been shocking to me, our House, our leadership in the House, not only did they not do anything, but they stop me. I'm trying to get investigations. Just get an investigation. Here's what I'm saying, just what I said a while ago. Where does the evidence take you? So if we have a massive amount of evidence that I come and say, hey, I vetted this, it's all looks pretty true, and it most certainly warrants an investigation. You would think you could get an investigation. I'm 35 years law enforcement. Bring the proof. I'd be happy to go to court. I probably could make arrest on what we have, but I don't come out and go, hey, it's this way. Let's do an investigation. Our house stopped me from getting an investigation. The OSBI, who are law enforcement officers who were created for child abuse, for sexual acts, and for government corruption. Now, here's all three of these combined in these things that we're talking about, and yet you can't get it. And the problem,
I'm going to stop you a second. When you were doing that, at the same time, we were getting investigations against our education department.
Yeah. In fact, I asked for subpoenas on these rapes, on these extortions, on the human rights violations. I asked for subpoenas. That's very well documented. Was told to go back and ask the agencies. Documented that I went back and asked the agencies. Documented that the agencies refused, and then documented that I went back and asked for subpoenas and were refused again. Documented that after I had a hearing and asked legally to do an OSBI investigation, which we had authority by law, that they illegally stopped us, and that the OSBI went along with that, even though they're law enforcement officers, and they took the same oath I did to actually, you have a duty to act when you know there's a crime, and they refuse to act. And again, what they were created for. There's going to be a hellacious day of reckoning. I'm going to make sure that we're calling that out. But here's what's funny is to sit down and talk to Sherrie. And again, I haven't worked the school thing like she's working the school thing. I've worked the prison. I've worked DHS. I've worked all this mental health, juvenile detention stuff on the criminal kind of side. But again, then you go sit down and talk to Sherrie and you hear what's going on in these school deals. And guess what? It's the same problem.
It is.
You know what's been shocking to me, Sherrie? And Bob, you're going to know this. Guess what? When you start looking, it's some of the same people that are involved in all of the. It's amazing how
Fighting it. Mm-hmm.
Same counties, a lot of, again, not to say that all counties can't have a problem, but there are some counties that by darn it have a massive amount of problems in the area.
Yeah. And again, you look at where it's happening, and it's happening in the legal, in the rural areas. Something I wanted to tag on, you talking about having trouble getting anybody to acknowledge this, is that I requested a task force be put together so that we could study, what is going on. I mean, I bring the receipts. I have the proof that it's happening, and that it's happening at an alarming rate. And I still can't get a task force put together through the governor's office in order to be able to study this, to bring all of the people together to be able to go, okay, this is happening. What do we have to do to stop it?
It seems like, though, that nobody cares.
That's what it feels like, Bobby. You're exactly right. It's like, why am I the only one?
On DLC.
Yeah. It's like, why am I the only one out here talking about this? Why is it that me and the people who I have, brought along beside me, why are we the only ones that are talking about this and concerned about it? And we've got a few pieces of legislation that have come through to kind of slap at the issue. But we need major reform in some of our legislation in order to be able to hold these people accountable. Like Texas passed a bill called Pass the Trash in 2017. It had some problems with it. There's some ladies that we've been chatting with down in Texas that are trying to get that bill reformed, but we can't even get a Pass the Trash law heard in the House or in the Senate in order to be able to address this issue. And Pass the Trash, if you're not familiar with that terminology, It's when a report gets made to a school, the school chooses not to deal with it. They allow the person to resign, where they have the ability now, because they don't have a record, nobody's investigated anything, there hasn't been a report made to the State Department of Ed, for any kind of
They just go somewhere
red
else.
flag to be put on them. They get passed on to another district where they go and groom the community again, groom the schools, groom the people that they work with, groom the churches, and they start their predation all over again. And so,
Sherry, if that person is a coach, and if they're a winning coach, now this shouldn't matter.
you're
But
right.
dang it matters big. If they
Right.
are a winner, I
Yep.
mean, they have state champion and they have a couple of state champions. You try to blast that sucker out, because I'm gonna tell you, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
Yes.
And again, that's the kind of situation we were talking about when we started about what's going on over. I can't remember whether it's Ringland or which area that happened in over there, somewhere around that area. But again, that's the thing that's going on. And here's the thing that quite gets me, being up there in the legislator, is Sherry, they put people who have not any, Mark McBride never had any business being the budget chairman. Hey, that boy, you know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna talk about people being smart. I can't call people short, but if I do call somebody short, they pretty short. You know what I'm saying? And if I say people ain't the smartest, sharpest pencil in the lot, they ain't the sharpest pencil in the lot. And I'll tell you, that boy don't impress me. And yet here he was over one of the largest budgets, and he knows absolutely
52%.
yes,
52%.
nothing about. And then again, they put other people in charge. They run all the education with people who ain't got a lick of knowledge. And then you have people who do have knowledge. Now, I will tell you, if you have knowledge, education, then you'll do whatever they say. If you'll say yes and do whatever they say, but if you stand up for the actual right things to try to fix something, call stuff out, guess what? They just write, you're stuck in nowhere land.
Yep.
Can't get heard, can't get your bills passed.
JJ, would that be compared to taking a person that's worked in the kitchen and making her a warden?
Well, and that's exactly how you take somebody who either, and probably won't even get how that happened. I mean, okay, I won't chase that rabbit. But here's the deal. No knowledge. I'll give you a great example. Look at not just the person who went from the kitchen to, one of the highest positions in DOC, but look at the director of DOC, who was a complete failure where he's at OMES, had scandal after scandal, and then turned around and was put over one of the largest agencies, has been a disaster, has no education, has no training, no experience, but yet that's where we see him being put. And again, what do we get? We got a massive disaster. It was predictable. But again, that's what they do with legislators. They put people in ag that know absolutely nothing about ag when they have people over there that work for the ag department. But again, they're not yes people, so they don't want them. Same thing with, public safety, whatever the subject. If you're not a yes person, do exactly what they say. They just try to ruin you basically and shut you down.
Yep.
Well, you put in your report, and I'd like to know a little bit more about this, because I think a lot of the people over there in education on that board, but he replaced 3 members. Now, the 3 people he placed, now, Sherry, you're going to have to know this. The 3 people that got replaced, were they doing something wrong and they missed meetings, or what? Why did they do this?
Hey, Bob, let me stop y'all for just 1 second. What Bob's talking about is that Governor Stitt just replaced 3 people on the school board for what? Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah. So what it's looking like is that he replaced them because of a vote on the immigration status collection data that was voted on at the previous meeting. The reason why it looks that way is because the 2 people who remained on the board were not at the meeting to vote for that rule, and they're still on the board. And the other 3 who did vote in favor of the immigration collection data, they were removed. And so That's definitely what it looks like happened. There's, some talk out there in the webverse that, that's the reason why it happened. And if you read the article from Kendra Wesson, where she tells her side of the story, that's what she was told. And so I wish that, if Governor Stitt didn't want them to address the immigration issue in the school board, I wish that he would have reached out to those 3 people who sat on the board who voted in favor of that rule, because this all could have been avoided and we would still have our children's champions sitting on the school board at this moment. Because that's one thing about Katie and Kendra, is that they were there for the right reasons and they were fighting for the children and doing the right thing when it comes to education in Oklahoma.
And so that everybody understands what we're talking about when we say collection of the immigrant information, the illegal immigrant, by the way.
Yes.
Not immigrant, the illegal immigrant.
Yes.
What we're talking about is that when I first come up there, and Bob, you'll remember this. You'll remember when they lit up old Doc Ritz over this. He asked him, well, how much money are we spending on illegals? Because we were told that at that time we had about 80,000 illegals in there, if I remember correctly, was the number. Now we're going back about 9 years. But again, when you look at the average price per student at that time was about 8,000. I don't know what we are today, but at that time was 8. And then if you had a bilingual, meaning could not or only one single language, he could not speak English, or he or she, then you had to spend another extra 1,000 to get a teacher who was able to communicate with those students. And again, when you get out to rural and you only have one student and you have to go out and try to find teachers who can do that, it becomes a pretty, big task. And so again, we had a legislator who just asked a simple question. We had a group of legislators to ask Joylis Hallshyster when she is superintendent that, and again, she stomped out of the room. I know because I was.
I asked her at that meeting. I asked her, how many illegals do we have in our school system? You know what the answer was? We don't keep track.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you'll remember, I asked how much money we spent, and I prefaced it and said, now let me tell you something. I don't really care about your opinion. I ain't asking for your opinion. I'm asking for some numbers. And we held her to it. There's 3 or 4 of us in there, just put the heat on her. And I laughed. She turned around and stomped out of, and that was a pretty big meeting. We had a bunch of people in there, legislators, stomped out and wouldn't even answer us. But again, that was 8 or 9 years ago. Here we are back on the same issue, probably more important today.
Didn't the president want to know this information? Did he put out something on this?
Well, why would you not? If you own a business, that's what I said that day. I said, let me just give you an example. I gave Joylis this example. I said, I'm a cow man. If your fence gets cut and your cattle get over on me, and I said, I'm a good neighbor and I'm going to let your cattle run on me, I still need to know how many cows you got over on me, because I only got so much grass and I only got so much feed. So I got to get a kind of handle on how much money I'm going to spend on your cows, housing your cows, Now, I'd like to just catch all your cows and run them back across the fence and build a better fence. Yes, that's what we need to do. But we need to have an idea how much money. And she turned around, and I'll guarantee you.
Do we know today how many illegals we have in our school system?
Mm-mm. We don't. And,
Why
you
would
guys
Governor Stitt do that? Why would he not want to know?
Well, I think that the rumor there is that he was trying to deal with it in his way. I don't know the details on that, so I can't speak to what what's in Governor Stitt's mind. But
I'll speak to it because 3 months earlier, he wrote an article. He actually, you can't get him to point a task force on molested kids, but guess what? He was happy to appoint a task force on giving the American dream to illegals, to bring them to Oklahoma, to give them a better education, to get them jobs, and to give them driver's license. Now, he come out with all that. That come out publicly, and he supported that. And so, again, blows my mind that what blows my mind is he comes out 3 months of that, Donald Trump gets elected, and then he comes out and goes, we're going to deport every illegal that started a deal in prison. So here's one way this way, one way this way. And now we see behind the scenes, we see who he is. And again, we see who he's appointing. That, I think, speaks volumes, is when we look at who's he appointing. And again, those people are coming from some pretty puke liberal places.
Well, and you could see exactly what the agenda was at the beginning of that school board meeting, because I think one of the very first things that was said by one of the three, they said something about, I want to talk about the immigration rules. And of course, they were shut down pretty quickly because that was something that they couldn't bring up. They couldn't add to the agenda. They had to go by the agenda, and they couldn't talk about that. And you could see immediately, what his goal was, and whether or not that was something that he was told to do. Go in there and disrupt, talk about the immigration. Let's get this reversed, that sort of thing. I mean, of course, it has to go through the legislature anyway, and I don't know whether or not the legislature is actually going to approve that. So you might have more insight on what you're hearing about that rule than what I am, but I believe that it will probably get killed in the House going through the rules process. So, taking those people off and putting his people on, and I think he was trying to hurt Ryan in that situation. And so if you're trying to hurt another elected official, you know what, go after that elected official, but don't take the people off of the board that are actually doing the right thing and trying to protect our children. Because Katie and Kendra are, they are salt of the earth and just amazing children advocates and education advocates. And so now he has compromised the school board because he's mad at Ryan Walters for something that Ryan is doing.
Well, and all this has got a political, Sherrie, and we all know that. Well, us three sitting here. I mean, McBride come out and said when they were getting all these subpoenas, which was amazing. We're sitting here talking today about can't get subpoenas on sexual predators. Bob asked this a while ago, what about getting subpoenas on Ryan Walters, or he was asking other, but that's what he's talking about, was that our House did not once but twice, maybe 3 times, went after Ryan on getting things that were subpoenaed that are ridiculous. How many people were hired from Texas? And how many people did you hire? And if they want to do an investigation, that's great. That's what we're up there for. If they want to look into that's within their preview. That's fine. But when we can't get subpoenas for sexual abuse and for taking kids away from families and for rapes in prisons and rapes at institutions, juvenile institutions, and they'll stop an investigation, but they'll go on that. And then, Bob, you'll remember this. McBride actually come out on Channel 9 interview and said, well, if Ryan wasn't a possible candidate for governor, we wouldn't be having these investigations. Wow. I mean, we weaponized the House of Representatives to go after somebody we thought was running. And again, that's what I think. And again, I think Stitt's got his eye on a political position. Stitt's always been a Ryan Walters backer, and all of a sudden he's just come out with an about face. And so again, I think that that's what it is. He's made a new alignment. I think him and Charles McCall have made an alignment. And again, I think that they're going after Ryan to make certain that he doesn't run for some either Senate down the road, congressional Senate, or for governor, something like that, because again, they fear him in the Republican Party. Now, I will tell you, Ryan would have a hard time in a general election because the other side and many of the Republicans are anti him. But I think he would be scary for them in a primary of Republicans. I think he would give them a run for his money. Now, that's what I think. But we'd have to look at a general. Could he win the general? That's what I would be scared of. Mm-hmm. Hey, one last thing. We're getting close to some time. But, I'm hearing all this. Bob, you may have some insight in this. Me and you really hadn't talked about this. But they've got an ethics investigation on Ryan. And, guys, when they get after you, guess what? They subpoena, they investigate, they wear you out. They can't do it like we say on real stuff. And then on stuff like this, they nickel and dime you. to make you look bad. But do you have any idea what that's all about?
No, I did see that where they were trying to. I think it was had something to do with the election. In his
Yeah, his
office
state
did something, but I'll be hard pressed because I think Ryan knows what he's doing, and I don't think any way in the world he's going to be cheating. But what's interesting is Hofmeister ran her campaign out of her office, her whole campaign, and nothing's ever said about it. No one said one word.
Not
except
one
you.
word.
Go after him. Now that ain't true, Bob. Now there is somebody said a word about it, because I can go get you. I wrote to the ethics. I wrote to the DA in Oklahoma County at the time. I think I wrote to the sheriff. I wrote to just practically the AG. I put it in the news. I screamed bloody murder that Joyless Hofschister was shysting again. Wrote an article about the whole deal. And guess what? Nothing. And that's what just amazes me. You can go after Hofschister. You know what? You want to talk about $55 million to Epic. And I have a statement from the owner of Epic saying he's got Joyless Hofschister in his hip pocket, told a law enforcement officer that who was sitting on the board, former sheriff, former highway patrol, board member. They closed the school illegally, and Epic shows up to purchase the school before anybody even knows it's closed. And this one remaining board member says, well, State Department of Education will never go for that. Oh, yeah, they will. But it won't be a problem. Well, Joy Hofmeister won't go for that. We got Joy in our hip pocket. Don't you worry about her. We can do anything we want. I've got that statement. I've got evidence that they closed this thing on purpose, knew it, set it up, hardcore evidence, gave it to the state auditor, nothing, gave it to the FBI, nothing. Nobody will do anything. And hardcore facts. It's upsetting. I'm upset.
Well, Sherrie, I want to say thank you for what you're doing. And I know that it gets frustrating that nobody cares. You can't get attention to something, and before long, you know what they're going to be doing? They'll be calling you. They're going to be calling you. Oh, you're just a mad teacher.
Troublemaker.
They don't. It's like they do it with JJ, because when you uncover corruption, they get on you. They want the corruption to stay.
Yeah, and I think that what they don't want to do, they don't listen because they don't want to have to deal with it. Right. Because once they acknowledge that there's a problem, then they're expected to deal with it. And so if they don't acknowledge it, then they don't have to deal with it, right? And then the other piece of it is I think that they don't want to look like they're coming after teachers. I'm not coming after teachers. I'm going after predators and pedophiles. And I say all the time, I said it at the beginning of this, that it is predators and pedophiles that are masquerading as educators in our education system. And they're doing the same thing within DHS, within the medical health field, and preying on our children who are institutionalized and going through, you put your child into a hospital setting, hoping that the children will be, taken care of, and then they get abused by the people who are supposed to be taking care of them. We're seeing it across the board in all of these different instances, and I don't understand how the people at the top cannot. I don't even care if they were to go outside of even what I'm, talking to me about it, and they want the credit for it. Give them credit. I don't care. I just want somebody to do something about it. And so, and that's one of the things that we see up at the Capitol all the time, don't we? We see legislation get stolen and they put it aside for a couple of years, and then they pick it up and then take it as their own language and then pass it and take credit for it. I'm okay with anybody who wants to take credit for this. I just want them to do something about it. I want them to acknowledge it. And even if there are any law enforcement people who are listening today, please reach out to me. Let's create our own task force. We don't have to go through the governor's office. I would love to put a private task force together to sit down at the table, figure out what needs to be done, how we stop this predation on our children, and make our schools safe again. That's the only thing that I want. I don't want credit for it. I just want it addressed.
Because when they get a task force, even if they do appoint a task force, Sherrie, you know this, I know this, they put the same people who created problem. So you get the people who created problem. How do we fix this problem? Oh, there is no problem. It's great. Everything's good. Let's change a few policies. Let's go home. Change paperwork, change the name of a piece of paper. Oh, we did a great thing. Look what a great thing we did. We had this task force. Drummond, when we got him to investigate rapes, I investigated rapes. And here comes McCall. Oh, well, JJ, they've already investigated. Here comes the director. Well, the AG and everybody's, well, the AG did investigation and found you weren't right, JJ. You go in and ask them, did you talk to the person who was the original reporter? Did you talk to the whistleblower? Nope. Did you talk to any of these witnesses who were rape victims? Did you talk to any witness? Nope. So who did you talk to? We talked to the investigator. Well, that's the guy we're accused of lying. So you talk to the liar.
We want to talk about the issues. Curriculum gets chosen and gets put out into the schools and that sort of thing, how it gets funded. So we want to talk about that issue. We want to talk about the school board issue. We want to talk about all of these things that people have questions about, that they hear on the news. They don't get the whole story. They don't get they get a little bit of the truth and then a little bit of hype. And so we want to lay it all out there. We want to tell the truth. We want to educate people so that they can take back their country. It is we the people, and we want to educate those people.
And the last thing before we get off, everybody's good on fire. Bob, did you have a big fire in your backyard, or were you pretty safe?
No, but Don Spencer did. Did you read about that? He had 3 houses right around him that burned up, and his didn't. And he said he called the fire department a number of times, and he got no fire. I guess they so many guys that was out everywhere, couldn't get anybody.
Sherrie, y'all didn't have any fire in your yard? You didn't?
Nope. We had nothing. We were safe. Did you see Governor Stitt lost his farmhouse?
No, I didn't see that.
I see that.
Yep, he lost his farmhouse. A friend of ours, Jenny White, she lost almost everything except for her house. I think her animals were safe, but I think it got her barn and some other structures.
She was out fixing the fence, and she was a little upset because people come by gawking at all the stuff. She was like, "Hey, y'all need to move on. I'm working here."
We had a fire, I think, about less than a mile from us, but we didn't have anything over here.
That's
but
good.
I appreciate what you do, Sherrie.
As many cows as I do, I'd be surprised if a fire could come across my place. My grass is just short. It'd be like, hey, I've got a fire guard. I got them cows out there grazing. So, well, hey, you know what? We're already over 1 minute. And so, Sherrie, I just want to tell you, it's been a great joy to serve with you, as well as just to have you on here, discuss. And again, I just feel like we barely grazed over some of the issues. So we'll have to have you and Kendra back on sometime together to have a conversation. And Bob, I just want to say, it seems like you did wake up. You were a big part of the conversation. And I appreciate you very much, Bob. So we're going to wrap it up today. We love everybody. Bless every one of y'all. And y'all have a beautiful day.